Chapter 3, Video 1, back by popular demand. We are going to start off the videos with a joke. So if you want to be entertained by pure comic genius, feel free to listen. If not, go ahead and skip ahead 20 seconds or so. So my joke for today is, why do skeletons not go trick-or-treating? Answer being, they have no body to go with. So again, just fantastic. Great comic genius. But now we'll get to more serious matters. First one being the election of 1860. So last time we had a video, we talked a lot about the different compromises. We talked about the Missouri Compromise, how that was unconstitutional due to the Dred Scott decision. We talked about the Compromise of 1850, how California is a free state. There's the Fugitive Slave Act, and people are starting to push for popular sovereignty. Now again, the last kind of building point where all this tension is almost going to snap is John Brown's raid. Again, here we have a northerner who is going into the South, actively trying to start a rebellion, actively trying to give enslaved African American weapons. The South, they condemn those attacks. Now, the South, they put the blame on the Republican Party because, again, we have Republicans versus Democrats pretty much from here on out. Now, they blame they blame the Republicans. The Southern media is very important in this. They're very influential, and they are going to put it all over the place, blaming that on the Republican Party. Now, the Republican Party, they are going to flat out come out and say that what he did was wrong. They're not going to sugarcoat it. They're not going to kind of, say, well, maybe it was justified, maybe it was okay. No, they come out right away and say that what he did was wrong. But to the South, it doesn't matter. To them, they're already almost at the point of secession. And then the final tipping point is the election of 1860. So first talking about the Republican side. Now, the Republicans, they need a candidate who is going to sweep the North. Now, the Electoral College basically is the only thing that you need to win. The popular vote, yes, in a way it's kind of important, but as we talked about before, you can actually win the presidency without winning the popular vote. Just like our current president, President Trump, lost to Hillary Clinton with the popular vote. But the Republicans, they need a candidate who is going to sweep the North, who is just overwhelmingly going to get the majority of those electoral votes. Abraham Lincoln is chosen as that person. Now, a little bit about Lincoln. He was a Republican. He's from Illinois. He is kind of chosen as what's called a favorite son. And what I mean by that, they were kind of unsure who to pick. They didn't have a very strong candidate. They thought maybe it could be William Seward, who was a senator from New York. But they didn't think he was outspoken enough. They didn't think he would sweep the North. So they kind of pick Abraham Lincoln almost in a way of, you've done a lot for the party, you've done a lot for different debates, so we're going to go ahead and pick you as a nominee. Not really expecting too much that he was going to win. But nonetheless, he is the nominee, and he wants to stop the expansion of slavery. Now, the Democrats, they are going to struggle to choose a single candidate. And that's because the Democrats from the North, they aren't really too on page. They aren't really too much on the same side of agreeing with whether or not there should be a federal slave act, basically saying what's going to be going on in these newer territories. So now, you kind of have a split between the North and the South, just not with the idea or the issue of slavery, but you're also going to have a split with the Democrats. And when they actually have their nominating convention, 50 delegates from the Democratic side leave. And when they leave, basically it means that they're not going to pick a single candidate. Now, eventually they meet again. Stephen Douglas runs for the Democrats, but they're also going to have a group of people known as the Southern Democrats as well. Now, and I'll move the camera here. The election of 1860, according to the South, shows a flaw in our system. I make sure to include this on here as well, what this flaw is. Again, you need to win the North. This is an electoral map. You can kind of see all the red here, which is going to be the Republicans. Lincoln wins all of the North. But because he loses all of the South, Democrats see that as an issue. They see it as, we're supposed to be equal in the House, we're supposed to be equal in the Senate, but here's a candidate who has absolutely no victory in the South, is now going to be the commander-in-chief, is now going to lead the country, and especially because they're already arguing whether or not slavery should exist or expand, they see that as a flaw. And because of that flaw, states, they are going to start to secede. And that's going to be where we start here. Now, once Lincoln's elected, it's kind of that final tipping point. All this tension had been building up to it, everything I've already kind of mentioned, but now that he's elected, they're out. Now, South Carolina, they are the first state to secede. After they secede, they pretty much have a call to arms for all the other southern states, telling them what is going to happen, telling them that Lincoln is going to try to end slavery, and they're basically going to try to get just about every single southern state to join them. Now, before we talk about the other states that are going to start to leave, there's also another issue with the presidency. Now, when we vote for president, we vote in November. Today, present law, they take office in January. Back when Lincoln was elected president, he would not take office until March. So that sitting president, if they lose, the actual term is known as a lame duck. Lame duck president, lame duck senator, lame duck member of the House. But it's important to know that Lincoln is elected as president, but he has to kind of sit back and watch for about 5 months. So South Carolina, they secede. By February 1st, 1861, 6 more states also agree to leave the Union. And as you can look at this map here, all of these states are now saying they are part of the Confederacy, that they no longer want to be a part of the United States of America. Lincoln, his goal, his kind of idea of what he needs to do as a president is to keep the country as one, keep the country whole. But he can't do anything. He just kind of has to sit back. The 15th president, James Buchanan, doesn't really do much. A lot of candidates don't really do much as they're a lame duck. So he sits back and watches. He can have ideas. He can have different policies. But unfortunately, none of those policies could have gone into effect. So because they couldn't go into effect, all these states are now going to start to secede. And again, looking a little bit ahead, the gray states are going to leave after. Border states are going to stay. But basically, it's going to be a war now between the red and these maybe light blue states versus the gray and the dark blue states. And talking about the South, they thought what they did was justified. They viewed it as the same thing as the Revolutionary War. This idea of no taxation without representation maybe doesn't necessarily apply, but having people from the North basically decide who the president's going to be in the South, having no say or no control over it, they think that it's an infringement upon their rights. So on February 8th, 1861, delegates from the seceding states declare the Confederate States of America. So they get together basically to decide what their constitution is going to be, and their constitution is going to be very similar, but obviously there's going to be some differences in there as well. So the similar constitution, what I mean by that, they're going to have a presidency, but the presidency is going to be a little bit different. They have one 6-year term, so like today, a president can have a 4-year term. They can have a max of 2. The Confederacy just kind of thinks it as 6-year term. You do that once, you are done. They are going to ban tariffs, meaning that there cannot be any tax on imports and exports. It is going to guarantee slavery. It also is going to have kind of an independence clause for each of the states, which is going to hurt them a little bit later on. It's almost like the Articles of Confederation that we had when we first started out our country. Again, with that, the federal government could ask for tax money, but if each state has their own independence, well, you don't have to give that money if you don't want to. But states' rights were so important for them, they were so influential that they were not going to write a constitution without having states' rights. So they think it's a good thing. As I said, though, it's going to hurt them towards the end. And then Jefferson Davis is going to be their first president, and his image is over here on the right side. So now we have everything kind of set up with the war. We talked about all the different tension. We talked about all the different compromises, John Brown's raid. Eventually, Lincoln's elected as president. Well, war is going to start. The South, they secede. They start to form their own country, as we see here with the Constitution, and now the Civil War is going to begin.